PowerPlayChess, brought to you in association with Kagi. The Olympiad has started in Budapest. 196 nations are taking part in two sections. There's the Open and there's the Women's section. It's a fantastic festival. In the Open section, I'd say India, China and USA are the favourites, but really anything can happen. As I'm going to show you with this first round game, this was extraordinary. Panama against the USA. So we have Mendez Machado for Panama playing against Aronian, now representing the USA. Have a look at this. It's an extraordinary game. So we have Mendez playing white, Aronian playing black. It's a Rotolimo. And I'm delighted to see that Levon played knight f6, which is my recipe that I recommended in my Chessable course. So the idea is that the knight puts pressure on this pawn straight away, so forcing white into a decision. So it challenges white from the beginning. Knight c3 played, that's the main move. And that's the move that I want to force, because it means that white can no longer play with c3 and d4 to build up a big centre. So g6, that's all as I recommended. So simple development, we want to castle quickly. e5. Now in the course I recommended knight g4. This is the main move. So putting pressure here, and after white exchanges, that knight gets pushed back. However, it bounces back into the middle. And once it reaches the outpost on d4, I don't think black has any difficulties. But Levon went his own way, as he so often does. He played knight h5. Now that's a little bit unusual. And white exchanged on c6. Castles. And now knight g7. So this knight reroutes. And remarkably, we have actually reached a very normal position. And it's really similar to the variation I just showed you, where the knight went from g4 to h6 to d4. But in this case, the knight is simply going via g7 and then into d4. And I think black's position is absolutely acceptable. It's very similar to my main line. But at this point, Levon went his own way. He played h6. Now, I think he's probably contemplating playing something like g5 and going his own way, a little bit expanding on the king side. But he runs into some difficulty. So knight e4, b6, rook e1. So the rook is opposite the king, and already you can see moves like either knight d6 or knight f6 become strong possibilities. I mean, after knight e6, I think black is still absolutely fine, just blocking the e-file, and then bishop g7 and castles. But Levon sometimes is a little bit casual. He played knight f5. This is really risky. If black has enough time to play moves like bishop e6, maybe bishop g7 and castles, sometimes even g5, then that's fine. But white plays an excellent move now. c3, covering the d4 square and introducing the possibility of g4, because after bishop g7 and g4, you'll notice that knight is trapped. This is the problem. So here is where Levon started to really improvise. He played g5. So obviously g4 has no effect at the moment. It can either, the knight, well, it could actually go to h4, but possibly could bounce around back to g7. And now another excellent move from white, queen a4, hitting c6. Now let's just have a look and see what happens if black plays bishop d7. then knight f6 is fantastically powerful. This knight has to drop back. I mean, what a traffic jam around the king. At h4, so white starts to break open the position, and this is fantastic for white. So Levon played queen c7, but this does not solve his problems, because after g4, well, he's running into difficulty again, because after that knight moves, then knight d6 is absolutely crushing. So for example here, knight d6, and you can see, well, if the king moves, then f7 drops and pawn takes. Well, let's just have a look at this. You can see a big check here, and that's a big queen there. It's gone. So after g4, Levon simply had to move the queen away, and Mendez just took the piece. So he's a piece up, and with a pretty stable position as well, and he now goes on the attack. A piece up, and he has the initiative. Just wants to blast open the position and get through to black's king. Levon played bishop g4, attacking this knight, and now Mendez dropped back. I mean, he's a piece up, everything's fine, but actually he could have just blasted through with d5. The thing with d5 is that it opens up the fourth rank. And if castles, then you can see you can exploit that straight away, because after this you're going to take this and white's in complete control. Or bishop takes knight. So material is even at the moment, but knight d6 is completely crushing. And white is just a rook up there. So d5 was the way to just keep kicking, and there's absolutely no defense for black there. But Mendez believed Aronian. He brought his knight back. Pawn takes. Knight b3. That's a good move. Hoping that black will take here. And again, this opens up the fourth rank. And yeah, knight simplification. White is a piece up. But Aronian castle queenside. C takes d4. And then he put the king on b8. So white is still a whole piece up, and this shouldn't be a problem to convert. Bishop d7. Okay, opposite the queen. And again, Mendez believed Aronian. He brought his queen back to a3. Hasn't spoiled anything yet, but still, there's no need to do that. It's possible just to go forward again. And this is crushing. I mean, white just has too many pieces. So white gave back the piece, but how is black's king going to survive with all these pieces attacking? This is completely winning for white. But queen a3 played. Bishop f5, rook c1, still winning for white. e6, hitting the queen, which came back to a4, attacking this one, rook c8, rook c3. Okay, that's a good square. You never know when this one might be able to launch on c5 and maybe double on the c file. Got to watch that knight, of course. King a8. So Levon is just hoping something turns up here. Knight g3. Okay, he wants to bring the rook over, having moved the knight. Bishop h3, right, be careful. And here is where Mendez makes a clear mistake. Knight f1. It looks like a good move. Hitting the bishop, you can bring the knight to e3 and then rook here and so on. But black has a devilish idea here. What did Aronian play now? You have a think, I'll have a drink. Black to play. Aronian, after this next move, is back in business. Cheers. b5. Extraordinary, but true. Black is in the game after this. Because if queen a5, here's the idea, bishop b4 has to be taken, and now c5. So the bishop was like a magnet luring the queen to this square. c5 is played attacking the queen, and queen g2 mate is threatened. Now, this is still better for white. White can give up the queen, but it's tricky. 3 minor pieces against the queen. White is still better because these pieces has a good square, but it's not so clear. Black is back in the game. There's always going to be a chance to maybe stir things up against the king. But at this point, Mendez, clearly he'd lost confidence and decided, okay, discretion was the better part of valor, and he played knight a5. So they now simplified into an endgame. And so quick body count, material is level. But watch what happened. Bishop e3. I mean, there shouldn't be an issue for white to hold the position, but it is a little bit unbalanced. And actually, yeah, just for a moment, well, black's rooks are together, white's rooks are split. The king is a little bit loose, these pawns are a little bit loose. Watch how Aronian just kind of knitted this all together and managed to win. Doesn't take long. And yeah, nice little press against white's king now. f4 looks a bit fishy to me, but you know, black might have the idea to set up threats against the king. But this doesn't look good. Watch what happened. And all of a sudden, white is lost. h4 check. King came back. Rook here. Check. The king got pushed up the board. And after this, white had to resign. What a turnaround. Okay, why did white resign? Okay, there is no good move, but let's say rook c2. Rook here, threatening rook h7. And there's no defense here. A classic laser beam checkmate. The king is trapped at the side. Brilliant turnaround from Levon Aronian. What an extraordinary trick with b5. I think the lesson from this game is when you're up against your opponent, don't back down. Don't believe them. You have to keep working. And there were moments where a little bit of calculation could have pulled white through. So d5 in this position, for example. And then a little bit later on, again, a little bit of calculation, knight c5, and black really is dead in those positions. Let me leave you with, I think, the best finish of the day. This was in the game between Christensen and Lee, Norway against South Korea. This is great fun. Christensen crushed his opponent here, but a nice finish. So Christensen has given up his queen, but it's clear that the king is in trouble. Check. King came up the board. Well, Christensen repeated the position once and then played h3. So that threatens this. Pawn takes. Now g4 will be met by king takes bishop. So first of all f4, and that is forced checkmate. g4 is the threat, and if pawn takes bishop, then rook h8 is checkmate. Lovely stuff. Always great fun when you see a king getting checked up the board. Indeed, checkmated. Well, more will be coming your way soon. I'll try to cover every round of the Olympiad. It's a fantastic tournament, and I think it's really exciting in both events, the Open and the women's section. You know, there's this real rival between India and China, but you know, other teams, the USA, and last time, as I mentioned, Uzbekistan actually got the golds last time. So expect anything. Thanks for watching.